RFK Jr.'s appearance before the House Oversight Committee on the weaponization of the federal government was pretty confrontational. A lot of Democrats really took it to RFK Jr. because of his extreme stances and views on COVID and vaccines and masks. Now, RFK Jr. is a Democrat who wants to run for the presidency against Joe Biden, which explains why Democrats were so confrontational, because they want to make it very clear that RFK Jr. has no support in the Democratic Party.
A few months ago, Mr. Kennedy, you compared COVID public health policies to barbaric, murderous tactics of Nazi Germany, saying that Jewish people in Nazi Germany had more freedom than Americans facing COVID health restrictions. In hindsight, Mr. Kennedy, do you reject this absurd and deeply hurtful and harmful comparison, or do you still stand by it?
Congressman, what you are saying is a lie.
That you said it.
I did not. I never continued.
Okay.
I never, ever
Mr. Chairman, I'm
compared
happy to
COVID
enter into the record when Mr.
countermeasures.
Kennedy said that. I reclaim my time. In discussing COVID public health measures, you made light of the genocide against Jewish people by saying, and I quote, "Even Hitler's Germany, you could cross the Alps to Switzerland, you could hide in an attic like Anne Frank did." Mr. Kennedy, do you think it was easy for Jewish people to escape systematic slaughter of Nazis, yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Okay, good. Mr. Kennedy, do you think it was just as hard to wear a mask during COVID as it was to hide under floorboards or false walls so you weren't murdered or dragged to a concentration camp? Yes or no?
Excuse me?
That's a question, yes or no?
I didn't hear your question.
Okay. I said, do you think it was just as hard to wear a mask during COVID as it was to hide under floorboards or false walls so you weren't murdered or dragged to a concentration camp?
Of course not. That's
Okay.
ridiculous.
But that's a comparison that you made.
I did
Mr.
not
Kennedy,
make that comparison.
Were the measures taken to contain the spread and fatalities related to COVID in any way at all comparable to the murder of 6 million Jews, yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Let's be very clear here. There's no legitimate comparison to the Holocaust. It doesn't matter if you're talking about AI, vaccine mandates, or anything else. There is no comparison. And if this were a slip of the tongue, Mr. Kennedy, or a one-off comment, we would all move on. But there's a deeply disturbing pattern. In 2015, you apologized to all those, quote, whom I offended by my use of the word Holocaust to describe the autism epidemic. When discussing efforts to encourage others to get vaccinated for COVID-19, you said Nazis did that in the camps in World War II. They tested vaccines on gypsies and Jews. That was a quote. Like before, you apologized for invoking the Holocaust, saying, quote, to the extent my remarks caused hurt, I am truly and deeply sorry. These are not real statements of contrition or remorse. They are passive-aggressive non-apologies that blame the listener for reacting to the lie you just spread.
Deny, deny, deny. RFK Jr. did quite a bit of that, but RFK, buddy, we've got the receipts. Here is Junior comparing Nazi Germany to our response to COVID.
We're going to have the right to compel unwanted medical interventions on us. The Nazis did that in the camps in World War II. They tested vaccines on gypsies and Jews. And the world was so horrified after the war, we signed the Nuremberg Charter. And we all pledged when we do that, we would never again impose unwanted medical interventions on human beings without informed consent. And yet in 2 years, all of that conviction has suddenly disappeared. And people are walking around in masks where the science has not been explained to them. They are doing what they're told. They are these government agencies are orchestrating obedience. It is not democratic. It's not the product of democracy. It's the product of a pharmaceutical-driven biosecurity agenda that will enslave the entire human race and plunge us into a dystopian nightmare where the apocalyptical forces of ignorance and greed will be running our lives and ruining our children.
While Debbie Wasserman Schultz didn't bring the video to Congress, Dan Goldman did and had this exchange with RFK Jr.
I'd like to quickly play a short video, if we could.
COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Mr. Kennedy, I have a simple question for you. As an early victim of COVID, I actually got it March 10th, 2020. And my question to you is whether you think I should be worried about my genetics as an Ashkenazi Jew because I did contract COVID.
No, not at all. And that statement that you saw there is a truncated version of a larger statement.
No, I understand. You issued a clarification.
Where I was describing,
I understand. Hold on. I had a simple question. You're now going on and reclaiming my time. Because what I really want to talk about here is evidence. Evidence, evidence, evidence. Mr. Johnson was so eager to talk about what he called the hard evidence, and yet all we heard again was him repeating allegations without identifying any evidence. You can repeat all of these allegations as much as you want, but it doesn't make them true.
And finally, Jerry Connolly, a Democrat from Virginia, did his best to summarize exactly what RFK Jr. was doing there, and that was simply to be used as a pawn.
And no matter what you may think, Mr. Kennedy, and I revere your name, you're not here to propound your case for censorship. You are here for cynical reasons to be used politically by that side of the aisle to embarrass the current president of the United States, and you're an enabler in that effort today. And it brings shame on a storied name that I revere. I began my political interest with your father, and it makes me profoundly sad to see where we have descended today in this hearing.
That's really what that committee is all about. It's not to uncover weaponization of the government by Democrats. It is the weaponization of the government by Republicans, much like Jerry Connolly said there. So this was RFK Jr.'s moment in the spotlight, and I mean, that's pretty embarrassing when you have to deny that you said things when there are videos of you saying these things. Also, I mean, what RFK Jr. talked about there, how he ended that one clip, pretty dark, pretty nihilistic. It was his COVID response, America's COVID response, was orchestrating obedience by a pharmaceutical-driven biosecurity agenda that will enslave the entire human race, plunge us into a dystopian nightmare, apocalyptical forces of ignorance and greed will run our lives and ruin our children. And this guy wants to run for president of the United States. You know, yeah, I mean, now that I think about it, that sounds a lot like Obama's 2008 message of hope and change, right? RFK Jr., man. You are going to crash and burn, and this is just the beginning. If you continue to stay in this race, to throw money away staying in this race, this is only the beginning. This is only the first of many times of watching RFK Jr. get embarrassed.